Cool. Let's go for it.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Alexis Adkins, and I'm here with Luke Mindlin. He is the coordinator of Morgan Freeman's company, Revelations Entertainment. Thank you so much for joining us. I know everybody appreciates you being here.
Yeah, nice to be here with you. So nice to meet everybody.
Wonderful. Well, we do have some questions to kind of get everything started.
Sure.
For example, what are some common stereotypes you see in character that can ruin a read for you?
Yeah, I mean, we get so many submissions all the time from all over the place, whether it's people we're familiar with, just kind of friends in the business, other actors that are on projects already that want Morgan to consider something, or just the constant barrage of material from CAA who reps us. But in terms of all of that we have to consider very seriously and critically. So whenever we're looking at material, some of the things that are hard to sort of get past can kind of be, when you have a personality like Morgan Freeman, it's kind of almost easier for, at least this is the sense that I've gotten in talking to writers over the years, is they have such the clear vision in terms of like who Morgan is and what that voice can do for a particular character or moment or something like that. But when writers try to kind of guide Morgan into being Morgan, it's kind of, and kind of it might almost feel unnatural sometimes. That's, almost a little bit of a turnoff, just because you kind of got to let him make it his own a little bit. I think the best content for him is, yes, sure, like you can have him in mind, but it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily want to see him, playing characters that he's portrayed already. We don't want to see him being pigeonholed in any way or feeling like he's being typecast because he's Morgan Freeman. He can play a range.
You don't
of
want to
things.
see like, oh, I saw Shawshank Redemption and so I wrote this, and it's exactly like that. So just do that.
Exactly. And thank you for your submission, but like I'm assuming it's not as good as Shawshank. So it's kind of having those kind of comps are a little difficult in terms of like gravitating towards. And I was just going to speak to that sort of trying to guide him into a role that he's already done before. We hear the Shawshank comp all the time, referencing him being God. At any point, you're kind of like, it's a non-starter,
right?
Or even sometimes we get a lot of biopic submissions too. So like the old jazz musician, or he did such an amazing job playing Mandela and Invictus that it's hard to, not that there aren't so many special characters out there that he would potentially want to play, but it's got to be really elevated and really sort of hit kind of scratch an itch that hasn't really necessarily been sent to us before, really.
That's got to be challenging because he's had just an amazing career.
Right.
How do you hit that mark?
Yeah. It's interesting because if it's something, I feel like, and you can see this with plenty of other A-list actors too, in the De Niro's of the world, the sort of that tier of actor, unless it's I feel like the best thing for these types of actors now is like, can they have fun with it? Can they kind of like take it and run with it and make it their own? I think one of the sort of underrated examples of that for Morgan, and this is just my opinion, I can't speak for him or my boss or anything, but just in my opinion, I thought the movie Red was like really fun for him, which is the acronym for Retired and Extremely Dangerous, for those who don't know. But it's him and Helen Mirren and some other A-list characters running around, basically being like hitmen. And he's savvy. He's Morgan, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like him and his friends taking you on this ride for that's totally unexpected. It's kind of like these old guys and gals that are playing that are almost like playing below their age, but like they're out there killing it. And they're having fun with it, and
Yeah.
really kind of changing like the stereotypes that you see in an action movie.
They all actually, if you've seen Red, they all look like they're having just the best freaking times of their lives.
Right.
And that's fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of blends in with that next, what are some things that draw Morgan to a character, things that are different, things that are, things that he hasn't done before.
Yeah.
Or even just something that would just like, I know that he's very passionate about bees. So
yeah.
I'm on that train. I'm like, I'm going to go start an apiary next to Morgan Freeman's.
Right. Yeah. So then that's actually sort of an interesting subject, because it's because that's very personal to him, because Morgan lives in Mississippi. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know. But,
I think that's common.
No, it's common knowledge. But
yeah.
He lives in Mississippi, and it's about conservation for him, and it's something that he doesn't necessarily. There have been so many studios or film crews or producers, whatever, who say we want to go over to Morgan's house and talk about his bees or whatever, and it's nice that people are interested, and we really appreciate that, but it's more of a it's more of a personal thing for him. But in terms of like stories that he really gravitates towards is I think one of the reasons why he did Mandela in Invictus a while ago is it's an important character, and it's an important story for people to know. And if you get the opportunity to play Nelson Mandela, of course you're going to do that. But I think right now, in terms of our development, just sort of one of the bright spots that we're looking at is a sort of what we call Black excellence, and we're doing a story called or we're doing this series that we're developing called 8 Fights, which we announced a while ago. It's been in sort of different iterations of development, but we're calling it 8 Fights, and we're starting it with Muhammad Ali. And not that Morgan Freeman is playing Muhammad Ali. This is more speaking to his producerial capacity, but it circles around. I feel like if when everybody looks at Muhammad Ali or projects that have been centered around him in the past, it's Will Smith and the big fights that everybody knows, Rumble in the Jungle, and it's sort of all these things that are really fascinating.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, kind of.
But that's all sort of stuff that like is big and splashy, and we know it, right? And it's familiar, and that's cool. But our series circles around. It's called 8 Fights, but it's also about what's going on in his life and in the world then. So it's like 5 to 7 minutes of a fight in an episode, but also, what was going on when he was exploring becoming a Muslim, what was happening in his own family, what was happening in his marriage, just all these different, very personal aspects of his life that we haven't really seen on screen. So,
and even possibly his own struggles with, is it encephalitis, the brain injuries from?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's not the right word.
What's that?
That wasn't the right word.
No. It's no, it's okay. And of course, now you put me on the spot. I'm blanking on what it is. But it's moments like that really piques his interest. And I can kind of give an anecdote about. I won't name the movie or the director who did it, but there's Parkinson's, thank you. Something that really draws Morgan into something is, as I said, stuff that we haven't seen on screen, right? So there was a particular movie that came out a while ago about World War II, and they were trying to save someone, and basically Morgan's insight into it was, I didn't see myself on screen in that movie. Like, where was I on screen? So we were presented with an interesting idea recently, where the story of finding Hitler's eagle's nest is actually really an interesting one. And we were approached by someone who has photographs of Black American soldiers finding Hitler's eagle's nest, like being some of the first people that arrived on the scene. And like, that's cool. And that's one of those little bits of detail that doesn't get shown on particular TV shows or movies, you know.
Right.
It's little things that are meaningful in terms of how history is framed, just in terms of how we perceive it culturally through the lens of motion pictures and television. So that's a really interesting thing that really helps us, you know, drive what we want to put on our slates. You know, it can be a new world that we're trying to build on screen. If anybody's seen a recent, this is because the world that I live in, I don't know if everybody else has seen this press release, but we're doing a feature called based on a book called Rendezvous with Rama. It's a very famous Arthur C. Clarke novel series that, you know, bits and pieces have been pulled from those books to make things like Arrival and Interstellar, you know, some other really big movies. But it hasn't necessarily been done as a full series. So right. Yeah, like really cool world building, you know, that's stuff that we're also really interested in.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, let's say, because Hollywood, everything shifts around a lot. Say, you know, down the road, you're working for another A-list actors production company. Mm-hmm. What would you say is a through line of writing work that you want to get an A-list actor attached to?
Wait, sorry, can you ask the question again?
Certainly. What is something that writers should be thinking about when trying to get an A-list attached to their work?
Got it. Yeah. So I think, you know, we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but yeah. You know, it's you know, I think especially with someone like Morgan, you really want to think of it in kind of an elevated way, right? You know, because he brings, you know, I feel like he brings such a brightness and stature to certain things as he's, you know, as he's playing a character, as when he's on screen, it's kind of, it's just impressive to watch him. You know, you want to see, but you want to see that come through in the writing, and you want to see something where he can really, like I kind of mentioned earlier, you really make it his own. You know, something where he can kind of feel his way through it. Something where the stakes are high enough. The you know, the questions that are being asked are relevant, but also just something that he can see himself playing that he, you know, hasn't really played before. You know, we just did a feature called that Morgan didn't act in, but we picked it up to produce it. It's called The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlain. So like something like that is truly a conversation starter that is, you know, it's about police violence and the conversation around how not, you know, sort of how the approach should be viewed in terms of the realities of it, and showing us an example of what needs to be changed, because it's not just that the conversation's being had, it's that the circumstances need to be changed. You know, the right types of help need to be called. So it's one of those things where if it's if it's something that can be kind of triggering in a good way, you know, something that can be sort of a momentum or a conversation changer, you know, all that stuff is really important to Morgan. And you know, he's, you know,
That's simply not just kind
yeah,
of
I mean,
torture porn.
you know, Morgan's an older gentleman, so he wants to do stuff that's impactful now. You know, I think in these, you know, impactful, but also he does also want to have fun. You know, I mean, we touched on him, you know, not writing stuff that's just like, here, Morgan, play God. He's really interested in like playing the devil at some point, or like playing Santa. You know what I mean?
I was actually just going to ask, he's been a protagonist in almost everything that I remember him in.
Mhm.
How would he feel about being the antagonist? How would he feel about being the bad guy?
That's the thing, is I think that he would love that. You know, I think it's sort of, you know, he's had such an illustrious career that like I think that at this juncture, it's almost like, give me the thing that you find to be opposite. You know, I'm just think Morgan Freeman next James Bond villain. Yeah, like yeah.
Yeah,
That would
I'm
be
down for
awesome.
that.
You know, you know, he did the Lucius Fox thing in Batman. You know, like what about the opposite of that? You know, it's a big idea, but it's got to be sharp enough. So you know,
Right.
it's really got to kind of scratch that itch that you know, in a way that's, you know, something totally different. That he just kind of takes him by surprise. I love all
Yeah.
these ideas that you guys are throwing out there now. Lovecraft and James Bond villain. Yeah,
Yeah.
love it.
And then through all of the ups and downs in the industry, because I'm sure that you have them just in different ways as everybody else, what keeps you going?
Yeah. God, it's also the duality of sort of how I think about content that's coming out now, in terms of like, yeah, I'm really excited that there's so many new hours of television, and or, you know, Netflix is in the volume game and they're just cranking stuff out, and you know, there's so much happening, but it's almost, you kind of get lost in the sauce, right? You get lost in the noise, and there's so much happening, and it's like, what do you pay attention to? Or you kind of, it's interesting because like I talked to my wife and about like what we're watching at night or whatever, and I know that I watch television differently than she does, you know, or movies, whatever. I, I have a hard time just kind of like plodding along, just like, yeah, like casually watching TV, you know, like I really want that thing that's gonna grab me, you know. I want something that cuts through the noise, something that's totally different, something original. You know, I think that that's one of the things that I have such a love and adoration for, is like, I don't know how many 90s kids are on this, are watching this right now, but I felt like the 90s was such a pivotal moment in cinema, where like there was so much original stuff being made. You know, you know, there's like, if you Google like movies that came out in 1993, it's wild. There's so much stuff that you know, isn't necessarily like, I feel, I know everybody says they want IP, they want, you know, they want built-in audiences, they want it's almost like the easy win, right? I love the idea of, you know, people creating like Yellow Jackets. I mean, I know that Lord of the Flies is pretty much like public domain at this point, but like it was such a kick-ass new way of looking at that type of genre, and you know, it's an amazing ensemble cast with so many, you know, badass women doing stuff that's totally feeling, you know, it feels new, but it has like that 90s vibe to it. You know, like I know that there's nostalgia in things like Stranger Things and Yellow Jackets, and you know, that gets people really hooked, but it's done on a level that's so different than other content. And I'm excited about people like Robert Eggers, who's coming out with The Northman later this year. Like he's these auteurs that do stuff that's just so different than everybody else, and it's so clear. Like when you see one of Robert Eggers' movies, or when you watch these creators, like it is a piece of their content, like it's singularly theirs. I love that, and that's the sort of stuff that I chase all the time.
Got their little fingerprint on it, and it's sometimes it's not overt, it's something subtle that you're like, and there it is.
Yeah.
And then I know we've got a couple questions. Sure. Like, does he produce other things? I know that we talked about he does produce, not just Acton. What is his perception or his thoughts on producing for female-led projects?
Yeah, I mean, that's so my boss is also his producing partner, Lori McCreary, who they've been partnered for going on 25 years now. And she's been the president of the Producers Guild and head of one of the heads of their diversity committees, and is so passionate about telling stories that are female forward, that show a different side of it's on a similar parallel to Morgan wanting to tell stories about like Black soldiers finding Hitler's eagle's nest. Like Lori wants to tell stories that are female heroes in the Middle East right now that are getting people out of Iran, or that are taking on gigantic amounts of pressure and handling situations that are they've usually been portrayed by some muscular dude, like helping people get out of a bad situation. There's amazing projects that we have on our slate with powerful, not just like women in power, but in a relationship, sort of how the female side of a partnership is so powerful in terms of we have a story called based on a book. I actually probably shouldn't say what it is, but anyway, one of our projects that we're working on is a struggling couple where Morgan's character has Alzheimer's, and it's his wife kind of helping him through figuring out like where he is, or like managing the struggles and the pain of having to watch someone kind of just wither, and right. But also the story that comes along with that and a dramatized source of pain for their family. It's really interesting the ways that we're seeing different stories be told now. And like we're even having like female-led like horror stories too. It's important to not just sort of see the stereotypical sort of genre-fied ways that we've decided to in Hollywood just kind of standardize characters. So yeah, I mean we're super passionate about content that's showing women in a different light, and for instance, like the COVID vaccine, a Black woman came up with the COVID vaccine. Nobody's right. talking about it.
Yeah. And of course, there's a white guy that's now trying to take credit for it.
100%. Yeah, of course, and that's the sort of not so thinly veiled obvious stuff that always gets put out, that we're trying to make sure is being told in a true way that's not just trying to put meat in the seats, not just trying to put a good looking guy to sell tickets.
I love that, meat and seats.
Sorry.
Nope, totally fine. We can go offline and we can exchange obscenities. So as far as like when A-lister, when a script is submitted to an A-lister, is someone
Mhm.
like you the first person to read it? Is there someone else that's the first person to read it? And then what do, I mean, of course, you know that with Morgan, he doesn't want to play Shawshank again or
Mhm.
Kiss the Girls again.
Sure.
Um, he's been like that main supporting character so many times.
Mhm.
Um, what are other, other than the obvious that we've already talked about, is there anything in
Mhm.
particular that you look for that says, oh, you know what, that might tickle his curiosity?
Yeah. You're talking about in terms of portraying on screen?
Correct.
Yeah. I think it's yeah, it's an interesting question because um, I think he really likes playing uh opposite people that he respects and loves as well. He was up for an Emmy for guest appearance in the Kaminsky Method last year, right?
Yeah.
And he loves, and that's a little different than I'm sure what people are asking, right? Like Kaminsky is already an established TV show, and it's how hard is it to get Morgan on to on board to act with Michael Douglas, right? Uh, but uh, but
But I think if he didn't really like Michael Douglas, that would be kind of a hard sell.
Yeah, right, exactly. But yeah, so in terms of Morgan, we're our company it's not our company is about 15 people. It is broken up into different divisions, and like if anything's written for Morgan, someone like myself, but sure, we'll always read it. But my boss, because she's been partnered with Morgan for so long, and she will always read it. She'll always make sure something's right for him. And I think just in terms of like vetting it generally, we want something that's that's fun and new, right? Like he was in, again, I feel like I'm just touching on stuff that's like, it's that, like like Coming to America too, like Coming to America,
Yeah.
he was in it as like a cameo, but like that was really fun for him. It's something super different. It's a total departure. He gets to be a comedic personality and kind of jump into something that's not his usual fare, right? I love looking at something that's got a comedic twist with sort of a little spice to it, that's something that he can play around with and have fun. And like I said, he'd love to play Santa Claus. Like I would love to find something goofy and funny, just because he can have fun with it. He wouldn't be bad Santa. He wouldn't do that. But like, he would do. He would certainly play a genuine sort of. I feel like
I
he
could see him
almost
doing
touched that.
like Miracle on 34th Street, because he
Yeah, like
has that great compassion that comes out
totally.
naturally. That, like, when you said it the first time, I'm like, I can't believe we haven't seen Morgan Freeman as frickin' Santa Claus already.
Yeah, yeah. And he would love to do that. So it's hard to say necessarily like what it is. Like, how can I pinpoint what Morgan Freeman wants to do? You know what I mean? It's really project dependent. I mean, there's he kind of has a saying that's ideas are a dime a dozen, but as good script is everything, right? So
Right.
if it's something that he really gravitates towards and is truly a good script, and he has a bunch of good dialogue and a rapport that there's other characters that he can play with, he can play off of, and really kind of sink his teeth into. Absolutely, it's something that we'll consider.
Yeah.
It's always it's very subjective. It's very much handled on a case by case
Even with
basis.
that, I mean, I know that he's done supporting so many times, but what if it is even something that is maybe like a minor supporting character, maybe just a couple scenes, not quite cameo, but
Mhm,
even along that line? I know, yes, of course he did it for Coming to America, but
mhm,
let's say one of the writers today, you're like, oh my God, that's actually a freaking great idea.
Yeah.
Send me the script. And you
Mm.
see the script and you're like, maybe the lead isn't right for him, but this, to,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, totally. I mean, so when we were producing Madam Secretary for CBS, he always would direct the pilot, or the first episode of each season, and he wasn't in everyone, but he would usually he played a Supreme Court judge, so he would appear like every once in a while, on screen as just sort of a supporting character, a recurring, special guest kind of thing. And that stuff's great too. It's something you can have fun with, but one day of shooting, kind of great, easy to fit in the schedule. That stuff's fun too.
yeah.
But that's sort of stuff that I feel like is always more that we get reached out to for him to, like, our agent will just be asked if he's wants to play something like that, and we'll kind of figure it out as it's being made. Yeah.
And I know we need to get to the pitches, the
Sure.
roundtable pitches here
Mhm.
as well, but someone did put in a question really quick that I just want to make sure is clarified. I know that you said at the beginning you get your scripts from CAA and agents and like friends of friends and things like
Mhm.
that. Because of how many scripts you get on a daily basis, do you even need to go to places like Coverfly or the Blacklist to look for scripts? Is that even
Yeah, I
something that you
mean,
do?
listen, there's untapped talent everywhere. I mean, I think and that's one of the reasons why I really like working with Roadmap, because I think that there's a lot of really talented writers out there. We do go to the Blacklist for sure. We have one of our feature execs is always looking, see who's winning Nichols fellowships, who's winning, or who's getting on the Blacklist. What's the, what's the latest, kind of indie horror feature that could be kind of made with that, made with like the Blumhouse financing style, sort of lower budget but really fun to make, and can really, like I said, kind of cut through the noise and be something new that we could make or produce, that again Morgan might not necessarily be in, but would produce, just because it's something totally different. Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
there's no shortage of outlets for us to source material from. Yeah.
Would you consider doing short films or only features?
Morgan.
Yeah,
Um,
either production or acting in.
right. It's an interesting question.
Maybe not.
I think I would say probably not. However, and I I know it didn't really work out, but like short form content is potentially still a thing. I don't know, but that's always possible. I don't know. I would say it depends.
Yeah, maybe not. It wouldn't be your high on your list, but if something really got your attention, you'd be like, oh,
Yeah,
well, you know what? Let's give this a shot. Let's pass this up
yeah.
the
I
up the
mean,
chain.
yeah. We work with a writer named Trayvon Free, who won an Oscar for that short film last year. If it was, we were approached by one of those producers before that movie was shot, and you know we were already working on a project with Trayvon, and loved the script, but we just didn't think that we would be additive. It's just in terms of um joining the team. But like something like that film that Trayvon did last year is 100% something that we would get on board with. If it's
Yeah,
if it's elevated enough, if the script's good enough, we'd definitely consider producing something like that. Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah.
And then I know Betty also asked in the chat that I know casting directors send to actors for a particular role. Is that something that like the agent pretty much kind of does a quick skim and then does a quick accept reject? Do you sit on it for a while? Like what do you think the turnaround time generally for that is?
Yeah, I mean, usually in terms of like when we want to, if we're, if we get a submission, it's usually thrown on our weekend read, and we usually decide on it just in a few days.
Right.
We like to turn around, make our choices fairly quickly. We don't like to keep people waiting, and like this is we do this because we like it. We like reading, so we take on stuff all the time, and uh most of the time we'll know within 30 pages or so, like, whether or not it's something that we really would want to do.
Like worst case scenario, Jeff Greenberg's office sends you something on a Monday, it gets put into the weekend pile, you'll know by the next Monday.
At the latest. I mean,
Right.
if we have a, more often than not, if we have an agency submission, we'll probably get to it before even the weekend. Like someone will read
Yeah.
it, next day.
Fabulous. All right. Thank you so much. I know that
Yeah, thank
everybody
you guys.
appreciated
This
it, and
was fun.
especially,
Yeah,
and the people who are going to be watching it later appreciate you as well. I'm going to
absolutely.
stop recording, and then I'm going to invite our pitchers. Yeah, pitchers
Yeah, pictures.
up here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming.